A poor black woman gave her only coat to a freezing child on a cold New York street. She had no idea that this single act of kindness would change her life forever. The next day, when she thought she'd lost everything, the child's millionaire father appeared with news that would leave her speechless. The winter wind cut through the streets of New York City like a knife. It was the kind of cold that made your bones ache, the kind that reminded you just how unforgiving this city could be. Jasmine Carter pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders as she walked home from her shift at Morrison's Corner Market. Her feet hurt. They always hurt after 8 hours standing at the register, scanning groceries, forcing smiles at customers who barely looked at her. At 30 years old, Jasmine had learned that life didn't hand out miracles to people like her. She'd learned to survive on hope and hard work, even when both felt like they were running out. The coat she wore was her only defense against the brutal winter. She'd bought it 3 years ago at a thrift store for $12. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And in a city where everything cost too much and paid too little, even a worn-out coat felt like a treasure. As Jasmine turned the corner onto Fifth Avenue, she noticed something that made her stop. A small boy, no older than 6 or 7, sat on a bench near the park entrance. He was shaking, trembling so hard that Jasmine could see it from 20 feet away. The child wore expensive clothes, a designer sweater, polished shoes, but no coat. His face was pale, his lips tinged with blue. He hugged himself, tears streaming down his red cheeks. Jasmine looked around. Where were his parents? Why was this little boy alone in freezing weather? "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, approaching him. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. I can't find my daddy," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so cold." Jasmine's heart cracked open. She'd seen plenty of suffering in this city, plenty of people who needed help. But something about this child's innocent face, his vulnerability, reached past all her defenses. She didn't think. She just acted. Jasmine took off her coat, the only coat she owned, and wrapped it around the small boy's shoulders. It swallowed him whole, but she could see immediate relief in his eyes. "There you go, baby," she said, rubbing his arms to warm him up. "You're gonna be okay. Let's find your daddy, all right?" "But you'll be cold," the boy said, his voice small. Jasmine smiled, even as the winter air bit into her skin through her thin work uniform. "Don't you worry about me. I'm tough. Now, what's your name?" "Oliver," he said quietly. "Oliver Blackwood." The name meant nothing to Jasmine. She didn't run in circles where names like Blackwood mattered. She was just focused on keeping this child safe. "Okay, Oliver. When did you last see your daddy?" "He was talking to some businessmen by the fountain. I wanted to see the park, and I just walked a little bit, but then I got lost and—" His voice cracked again. "I was so scared." Jasmine took his small hand. "It's gonna be okay. We'll find him." As they walked toward the fountain, Jasmine noticed a group of men in expensive suits gathered near the center of the park. One man, tall and distinguished, was talking animatedly on his phone, panic clear in his voice. "Oliver! Oliver!" he was shouting. "Daddy!" Oliver broke free from Jasmine's hand and ran toward the man. The man dropped to his knees, catching his son in a fierce embrace. Relief, raw and overwhelming, flooded his face. He held Oliver like he'd almost lost the most precious thing in the world. Because he had. "Oh, thank God. Thank God," he whispered, kissing the top of his son's head over and over. Then his eyes fell on the coat, clearly too large, wrapped around Oliver's small frame. He looked up and saw Jasmine standing there, shivering in the cold, her arms wrapped around herself. Their eyes met. In that moment, Richard Blackwood, one of the wealthiest men in New York, CEO of Blackwood Industries, saw something he rarely witnessed in his world of money and power. Pure, selfless kindness. "You." He started, his voice thick with emotion. "You helped my son." Jasmine nodded, her teeth starting to chatter. He was cold. I couldn't walk past him." Richard stood slowly, still holding Oliver close. He looked at this woman, this poor black woman in a worn grocery store uniform, who had given away her only protection against the winter cold to save a child she didn't know. "That's your coat," he said, not a question but a statement filled with awe. "It's okay." "He needed it more," Jasmine said simply. Richard Blackwood stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone around him. He took off his own expensive wool coat and walked over to Jasmine. "Please," he said softly. "Take this." "Oh no, sir, I couldn't, I insist." His voice was gentle but firm. "You saved my son. You gave him what he needed when I failed to protect him. Please, allow me to do the same for you." Jasmine hesitated, then accepted the coat. It was the warmest thing she'd ever worn. "What's your name?" Richard asked. "Jasmine. Jasmine Carter." "Jasmine." He extended his hand. "Thank you. Truly. I don't know how to repay this kindness." "You don't need to repay anything," Jasmine said with a tired smile. "I'm just glad he's safe." But Richard Blackwood didn't forget. As Jasmine walked away that night, disappearing into the New York crowds, he made a decision that would change everything. He had to find out more about the woman who had shown more humanity in 5 minutes than most people showed in a lifetime. What Richard discovered would shock him. And what he decided to do about it would save Jasmine from a nightmare she didn't even know was coming. Because the very next day, Jasmine Carter would walk into Morrison's Corner Market facing the worst day of her life, completely unaware that the millionaire father she'd helped was about to walk through those doors with news that would change everything. Jasmine barely slept that night. The expensive coat Richard Blackwood had given her hung on the back of her door, a reminder that yesterday had actually happened. She kept touching it, making sure it was real. In the morning, she carefully folded it and placed it in her closet. She couldn't wear something so luxurious to work. Her manager, Mr. Peterson, would ask questions. He always did. Gerald Peterson was the kind of man who seemed to enjoy making other people's lives difficult. At 52, he'd been managing Morrison's Corner Market for 15 years, and he treated that small kingdom like he was royalty. When Jasmine arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, she noticed something was different. Mr. Peterson stood by the entrance with 2 men in corporate suits. Their faces were serious. Cold. "Ms. Carter," Peterson said, his voice dripping with false formality. "These gentlemen are from regional management. They need to speak with you." Jasmine's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" One of the suits, a thin man with glasses, opened a folder. "Ms. Carter, there's been a discrepancy in your register. We've been conducting an audit, and we found a shortage of $300 from last week's shifts." The words hit her like a punch. "What? No, that's impossible. I've never—" "The numbers don't lie," Peterson interrupted, crossing his arms. His expression showed something dark. "Satisfaction. $300 missing, all from shifts you worked." Jasmine felt the room spinning. $300. That was nearly half her monthly rent. "Mr. Peterson, you know me. I would never steal. Never." "The evidence suggests otherwise," the second suit said coldly. "We'll need to conduct a full investigation. Until then, you're suspended without pay." "Suspended?" Jasmine's voice cracked. "But I didn't do anything wrong. I have bills, I have rent due in 5 days. That's not our concern," Peterson said, and Jasmine could swear she saw a smile play at the corner of his mouth. "You should have thought about that before taking what doesn't belong to you." The injustice of it burned through her veins. She wanted to scream, to cry, to demand they check the security cameras. But she knew how this worked. She'd seen it before. A poor black woman accused of theft? In this city, she was guilty until proven innocent. And sometimes, not even then. "Please," she whispered. "I need this job. I didn't take any money." "We'll contact you when the investigation is complete," the thin man said, closing his folder. "Please leave the premises immediately." Jasmine felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of Peterson, who was clearly enjoying this. As she walked toward the exit, her co-worker Maria rushed over. "Jasmine, what's happening?" "They're saying I stole money," Jasmine said quietly. $300. Maria's eyes went wide. "But that's crazy. You're the most honest person here. Last month you chased down that customer who accidentally got too much change." "It doesn't matter," Jasmine said, her voice hollow. "They've already decided." She walked out into the cold December morning, feeling more lost than she'd felt in years. Without her paycheck, she'd lose her apartment. Without a reference from Morrison's, she'd struggle to find another job. This wasn't just a setback. This was disaster. Jasmine didn't know that Gerald Peterson had been planning this for weeks. She didn't know that he'd taken that $300 himself, needed it for gambling debts, and decided to frame the employee he resented most. He resented her because she was good at her job. Because customers liked her. Because she had something he'd lost years ago: integrity. Jasmine sat on the bench outside the store, trying to figure out what to do next. She had $73 in her bank account. Rent was $450. She had no family to call, no safety net. She put her head in her hands, and finally, the tears came. She didn't notice the black Mercedes pull up to the curb. Didn't notice the tall man in the expensive suit step out and stop when he saw her crying. Didn't notice the recognition flash across his face. Richard Blackwood had come to Morrison's Corner Market that morning on a mission. After yesterday, he'd asked his assistant to find out everything about Jasmine Carter. What he learned had troubled him deeply. A woman working 2 jobs, barely surviving, no family support. A woman who gave her only coat to a stranger's child despite having nothing to spare. He'd come to personally thank her, perhaps offer a reward, something to acknowledge the profound kindness she'd shown. But now, seeing her sitting outside the store, crying, something in his chest tightened. "Jasmine," he said softly. She looked up, shocked. Through her tears, she saw the millionaire father from yesterday, the man whose son she'd helped. "Mr. Blackwood," she whispered. "What are you doing here?" Richard sat down beside her on the bench, not caring about his $3,000 suit. "I came to find you. To thank you properly for what you did for Oliver. But something's wrong. Tell me what happened." And something about his voice, something about the genuine concern in his eyes, made Jasmine break down completely. She told him everything. The accusation. The suspension. The impossible situation she was facing. Richard listened, his jaw tightening with each word. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, his expression shifting into something Jasmine hadn't seen before. Something powerful and determined. "Come with me," he said. "What?" "Come with me. Right now." Richard Blackwood walked toward the entrance of Morrison's Corner Market with Jasmine following uncertainly behind him. She had no idea what he was about to do. But in 60 seconds, Gerald Peterson's entire world was about to shatter. The bell above Morrison's door chimed as Richard Blackwood walked in, with Jasmine hesitantly following behind him. Several customers turned to look. Richard's presence commanded attention, even in a small corner market. Gerald Peterson looked up from behind the counter, irritation flashing across his face when he saw Jasmine. "Ms. Carter, I told you to leave the premises. Are you the manager?" Richard's voice cut through the air like steel. Peterson straightened, suddenly registering the expensive suit, the confident bearing. "Yes, I'm Gerald Peterson. How can I help you?" "I'm Richard Blackwood." He paused, letting the name sink in. "Of Blackwood Industries." Peterson's face went pale. Everyone in New York knew that name. Blackwood Industries owned half the commercial real estate in Manhattan, including the building that housed Morrison's Corner Market. "Mr. Blackwood, sir, this is an unexpected honor. You just accused this woman of stealing $300, Richard said flatly. Peterson's eyes darted between Richard and Jasmine, confused. "Well, yes, there was a discrepancy in the accounts. We have to investigate all. Show me the evidence." "Excuse me." "The evidence," Richard repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Show me exactly what proves Ms. Carter took that money." Peterson fumbled with some papers, suddenly nervous. The two corporate suits appeared from the back office, sensing trouble. "Mr. Blackwood," the thin one said carefully, "we're conducting a standard audit. The shortage occurred during shifts Ms. Carter worked." "That's circumstantial at best," Richard said. "Do you have video footage of her taking money?" "Well, no, but do you have witnesses?" "The register numbers speak for themselves," Peterson interjected, gaining false confidence. "Listen, I don't know what your connection to this woman is, but we follow protocol here." "Your protocol?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "Let me tell you what I know. Yesterday, this woman gave her only coat to my 6-year-old son when he was freezing and lost. She had nothing to gain and everything to lose. She showed more character in 5 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from sadness. "That's very touching," Peterson said dismissively, "but it doesn't change the fact that money is missing." "You're right," Richard said quietly. "It doesn't. So let's find out where it really went." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "James? I need you to send our forensic accounting team to Morrison's Corner Market immediately. Full audit, everything, going back 6 months. Also, call our head of security. I want all surveillance footage from the store reviewed." Peterson's face went from pale to gray. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait," Richard said, his voice cold. "You're accusing an innocent woman of theft. If you're right, I'll personally ensure she faces consequences. But if you're wrong..." He let the threat hang in the air. The thin suit cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Blackwood, perhaps we were hasty. We could postpone the suspension until..." "Oh no," Richard interrupted. "We're past that now. My team will be here within the hour. They'll examine every transaction, every deposit, every dollar that's moved through this store. And we'll find the truth." Jasmine stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. This millionaire was defending her, fighting for her. Why? Peterson's hands were shaking now. "This is completely unnecessary. I'm sure we can resolve this." "You're right about one thing," Richard said. "We will resolve this. Completely." Within 45 minutes, 3 people in professional attire arrived with laptops and equipment. They spread out across the store, requesting files, examining computers, reviewing records. Richard stayed the entire time, standing beside Jasmine like a guardian. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered to him. He looked at her, his expression softening. "Because yesterday you showed me something I'd forgotten existed in this city. Real kindness. And because I recognize injustice when I see it." 2 hours later, one of the forensic accountants approached Richard with a laptop. "Sir, we found something." Everyone gathered around. On the screen were records showing a pattern. Small withdrawals from the register, always logged as manager discretion, always during evening shifts when Peterson worked alone. The total? Nearly $3,000 over the past 4 months. Peterson's face went from gray to green. "It appears," the accountant said carefully, "that someone has been systematically taking money from the register and falsifying records. The $300 Ms. Carter was accused of taking? That withdrawal was made last Tuesday at 9 p.m. "I don't work Tuesday evenings," Jasmine said quietly. "Only Mr. Peterson does." Everyone turned to look at Gerald Peterson. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "I think," Richard said softly, "we found our thief." The corporate suits immediately moved toward Peterson, but Richard held up his hand. What he said next would shock everyone in that store, including Jasmine. Because this wasn't just about proving her innocence anymore. This was about changing her entire life. Gerald Peterson collapsed into a chair, his face buried in his hands. The evidence was undeniable. The timestamps, the withdrawal patterns, everything pointed directly to him. I was desperate," he mumbled. "Gambling debts. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed." The thin corporate suit shook his head in disgust. "Mr. Peterson, you're terminated effective immediately. We'll be pressing charges." As security escorted Peterson out, he looked at Jasmine with something like remorse. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Jasmine couldn't speak. Everything had happened so fast. One moment she was facing disaster, the next her name was completely cleared. The corporate representatives turned to her, suddenly deferential. "Ms. Carter, we apologize profusely for this misunderstanding. You're reinstated immediately with full back pay, and we'll provide a formal letter clearing your name." "Thank you," Jasmine said softly, still processing everything. After they left, the store fell quiet. It was just Jasmine and Richard now, standing in the small market that had almost destroyed her life. "I don't know how to thank you," Jasmine said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me. You saved my job, my apartment, my life." Richard smiled gently. "You saved my son. This doesn't even begin to repay that debt. But I didn't do it for payment. I did it because it was right. I know, Richard said. That's exactly why I had to help you. Because people like you, people with real integrity, they're rare. Especially in this city. Jasmine wiped her eyes. I should get back to work. They'll need someone to cover the register. Richard hesitated, then said, Actually, I was hoping we could talk. There's something I want to discuss with you. They sat at the small break table in the back of the store. Richard seemed to be choosing his words carefully. Jasmine, I've been thinking about something since yesterday. My company, Blackwood Industries, we have a foundation. We fund community programs, scholarships, initiatives to help people in need. But honestly, he shook his head. I've been disconnected from it. Signing checks, attending galas, but not really understanding the people we're supposed to help. Jasmine listened, unsure where this was going. Yesterday you reminded me what real compassion looks like, Richard continued. Not writing a check from a distance, but actually seeing someone who needs help and acting. No hesitation, no calculation. Just pure human kindness. I just did what anyone should do, Jasmine said. But most people don't, Richard replied. That's the problem. And I want to change that, starting with my foundation. I want to make it actually matter, actually reach people who need it. And I need someone who understands what that really means. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. I'm offering you a position. Community Outreach Director for the Blackwood Foundation. You'd help identify real needs in the community, work directly with families and individuals, make sure our resources go where they'll actually make a difference. Jasmine stared at the card, her hands trembling. Mr. Blackwood, I'm a grocery store cashier. I don't have experience with. You have exactly the experience that matters, Richard interrupted gently. You understand struggle. You understand what it means to have nothing and still give. That's not something you can learn in business school. But I never went to college. I barely finished high school because I was working to support myself, which shows resilience, determination, and real-world knowledge, Richard said. Jasmine, I'm not looking for someone with fancy credentials. I'm looking for someone with heart. Someone I can trust to use our resources to genuinely help people, not just make the foundation look good. Jasmine's mind was reeling. This morning she thought she'd lost everything. Now a millionaire was offering her a job that sounded like a dream. The salary would be $75,000 a year to start, Richard added. Full benefits, health insurance, retirement plan. $75,000. Jasmine currently made $22,000 working full-time at Morrison's. She felt dizzy. I can't accept charity, she whispered. This isn't charity, Richard said firmly. This is a job offer based on character and capability. You'd be earning every dollar. Actually, you'd probably be underpaid for what you'd bring to the position. Jasmine looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of pity or condescension. She found only genuine respect. Why? She asked. Why are you really doing this? Richard was quiet for a moment. Because yesterday, my son was lost and freezing, and you saved him without thinking twice. Because today, you were falsely accused and you still maintained your dignity. And because I want Oliver to grow up in a world where kindness like yours is rewarded, not punished. Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the door burst open. A small voice shouted, Miss Jasmine. And Oliver Blackwood came running in, still wearing her old coat. What he said next would make Jasmine's decision crystal clear. Oliver ran straight to Jasmine and threw his arms around her waist. Miss Jasmine. I told Daddy we had to find you. I wanted to return your coat and say thank you properly. Jasmine knelt down to his level, her heart melting at his bright, sincere smile. Hey there, Oliver. You doing okay? Staying warm. Yes. Because of you. He hugged her tighter. Daddy said you gave me your only coat. That you were cold so I wouldn't be. You needed it more than me, sweetheart, Jasmine said softly. Oliver pulled back, his young face suddenly serious beyond his years. My teacher says that's what heroes do. They help people even when it's hard for them. Tears filled Jasmine's eyes again. This little boy, this innocent child, saw her as a hero. Not as a poor black woman struggling to survive. Just as someone who did the right thing. Richard watched the interaction, his own eyes glistening. "Oliver insisted we bring your coat back. Though I told him I'd bought you a new one." "You can have both," Oliver said enthusiastically. "Because you're the nicest person I ever met, and nice people deserve nice things." Jasmine looked at this child, then at his father, and suddenly everything became clear. This wasn't about money or status or charity. This was about human connection. About recognizing goodness and honoring it. She stood up slowly and looked at Richard. "I accept." Richard's face broke into a genuine smile. "You do?" "Yes. But on one condition." Jasmine's voice was steady now, confident. "I want to do this right. I want to really help people, not just manage programs from an office. I want to be in the community, meeting families, understanding their struggles. Can I do that?" "That's exactly what I'm hoping for," Richard said, extending his hand. "Welcome to the Blackwood Foundation, Jasmine." They shook hands, and Jasmine felt her entire world shift. Yesterday she'd been one paycheck from homelessness. Today she had a career, security, and purpose. "There's one more thing," Richard said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Consider this a signing bonus and compensation for what you went through today." Jasmine opened it and gasped. A check for $10,000. "Mr. Blackwood, I can't." "You can and you will," he said firmly but kindly. "You gave everything you had to help my son. Let me help you start this new chapter properly. Pay your rent ahead, buy yourself some new coats, whatever you need." Jasmine clutched the envelope, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll start Monday," Richard smiled. "We have a lot of work to do." Over the next few months, Jasmine transformed the Blackwood Foundation's community outreach program. She didn't work from a fancy office tower. She went into neighborhoods, met families, listened to their stories. She created programs for single mothers, job training initiatives, winter clothing drives. Every person she helped, she remembered what it felt like to be cold, to be scared, to be falsely accused. She remembered what it meant when someone simply saw you as human and chose kindness. Richard often joined her on site visits, bringing Oliver along. The boy had become attached to Jasmine, and she to him. Not as a poor woman grateful to a rich family, but as genuine friends who'd been brought together by an extraordinary moment. 1 year later, on a cold December morning, Jasmine stood in Central Park at the Blackwood Foundation's annual winter coat drive. They were giving away 1,000 coats to families in need. Richard stood beside her, watching volunteers help children try on warm jackets. "You know, a year ago today, I almost lost my son. And I found someone who reminded me what truly matters." Jasmine smiled. "A year ago today, I thought my life was over. And I found out that one act of kindness can change everything." Oliver ran over, dragging a little girl his age who was wearing a brand new pink coat. "Miss Jasmine. This is Maria. Her mom works at a grocery store just like you used to. Isn't that cool?" Jasmine knelt down, looking at the little girl who reminded her so much of her younger self. "That's very cool. Your mom works very hard, doesn't she?" The girl nodded shyly. "You tell her," Jasmine said gently, "that hard work and a kind heart are the most valuable things in the world. And they will always be rewarded, even when it doesn't seem like it." As the sun set over New York City, painting the winter sky in shades of orange and gold, Jasmine reflected on the incredible journey of the past year. She'd gone from struggling to survive to thriving with purpose. But more than that, she'd learned something profound. Kindness was never wasted. Compassion was never foolish. And sometimes, when you give everything you have to help someone else, the universe finds a way to give back tenfold. She looked at Richard, at Oliver, at all the families being helped today, and understood the true lesson of her story. In a world that often feels cold and indifferent, one act of kindness can create ripples that change lives forever. Jasmine didn't help Oliver because she expected anything in return. She helped him because it was right. Because when we see someone in need, our humanity calls us to act. And Richard didn't save Jasmine's job because he owed her a debt. He did it because he recognized something rare and precious: genuine goodness. The question isn't whether good deeds are rewarded. The question is, are we brave enough to do good even when no reward is promised? Jasmine was. And it changed everything. Give this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Here's another story waiting for you. I'm sure it will change the way you see the world. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.